Welcome back to the discussion Smart Auto Shopping and Financing, sponsored by PenFed Credit Union on Federal News Network. My guests today are Jay Fee, the Vice President of Consumer Banking at PenFed Credit Union, Chris Klaczynski, the Director of Direct Auto Lending at PenFed Credit Union, and Sean Worthy, the Assistant Vice President for Corporate and Business Development at PenFed Credit Union. I'm your moderator, Scott Maucione. And, we've talked all about financing now, all about refinancing. Let's talk about shopping. What is changing in auto shopping in this year?
Yeah, I'll take that. I think auto shopping in general has just been going through tremendous disruption, even pre-pandemic. The pandemic has definitely escalated that and expedited it. But you saw even before that, new players coming into the market, vendors like Carvana, Vroom, being able to, you see these car vending machines. It's a very different way of buying a car. You have manufacturers now actually engaging in certain instances of selling used vehicles directly to consumers, off-lease vehicles, things like that. Also, the big shift in general is, you're in the internet age, and there's a proliferation of information out there. Plenty of service providers, like we mentioned before, TrueCar, lenders, even such as ourselves, we're engaging in trying to educate our consumers on available options, not just financing, but available options with cars. And that's one of our goals here is to try to help educate our customers, our members, and making sure that they're purchasing the right car that meets their needs. Again, also as population goes, people have historically dreaded purchasing vehicles. A lot of it comes down to just the agony of shopping for it, the research, as we had mentioned, the amount of time it takes to maybe finance the vehicle, work with the dealer, and people are impatient about that. And so you're seeing things change in terms of the ability to sign documents electronically. I think probably expedited with the pandemic. You don't even have to step foot at the dealership anymore. Again, outside of online services like Vroom and Carvana, you can actually work with dealers. A lot of dealers during the pandemic started bringing cars to your house to test drive, to give you that safety and assurance that you didn't have to leave your house and go somewhere else. They're coming to you. So a lot of it really just comes down to, again, the research, finding the car you want, and once you've kind of had that in mind, working with the partners to meet your needs.
So, yeah, just tagging on to what Chris was saying, I think I have teenagers and now college-age kids, and I remember taking them car shopping there as they were turning 17 and 18, watching me buy a car, and I think they were horrified that it wasn't as easy as going out on Amazon and clicking the buy button. They viewed it as a medieval process and wanted to know why it took 4 hours to buy a car. That was a couple years ago. Lots of car dealers and then financial institutions too have been trying to simplify the process, and it's you're just seeing those changes now taking place, and COVID has really caused us as financial institutions and also in the dealers to really change the way that we provide vehicles and financing to consumers. It's really kind of forced things up very quick in a very fast manner. So we know COVID's changed a lot of things. It's really changed the car buying process. And so now you can pretty much find a lot of information out there. You have been able to for the last 10 years out on the internet, but now you're actually able to take that information and work remotely with the dealer, as Chris said, and actually drive people and drive the dealer to actually give you the car the way that you want it and on your timing. So consumers should not feel at this point that they're being told what to do during the purchase process. So they're much more in control, and information and the access to information is certainly the key to that.
So, before this, we were talking about the financing and the credit score. It's important to know your credit score. When you come in, you got to make sure that it's safe as well. And we know that the government was recently hacked, and that's one of we think the safest places when it comes to cyber. So, keeping yourself protected is also very important. How do we, make sure that our credit score is kept safe and not being used by some, dark web person or, credit card errant lost in a mall or something like that?
Yeah, one. So I'll say, right, when you're like applying for financing and you're sharing your social security number with financial institutions or, the dealer on a credit application, I think first and foremost, whoever you are working with, like if it's the dealer you choose or the financial institution, you're sharing very, very personal and private information. So I think that's like the first thing to consider, right? Who are you working with? Like you obviously have to trust these companies that you're providing this very, very personal information to. So I would say that's kind of step one, is consider who you're working with and sharing this information with. Like, are they a trusted source? You obviously need to be very, considerate of that fact. Beyond that, there's a lot of tools out there. Some are free. You take like Credit Karma, for example. If if somebody pulls your credit, they'll give you like an email notification, text notification. Hey, we noticed there's a new inquiry on your profile. Those are free services. They're not as timely as some of the paid services, but it's a good place to start. There's a lot of paid services out there that do credit monitoring. They do the repair. Should somebody take a loan out or apply for credit on your behalf, they'll remediate those cases. So they'll contact the bureaus, fix the inquiries, do all the legwork for you. But those are paid services, with some sort of like monthly subscription fee. And then kind of the third thing, which not a lot of people know exists, is you could consider freezing your credit. So you can actually contact the bureau agencies. You can contact Equifax or TransUnion or all three and say, hey, I want a freeze put on my account. Not necessarily something I would recommend, because anytime you do want to apply for credit, it becomes a roadblock. You then have to contact the reporting agency, let them know, hey, I'm trying to apply for a car loan with PenFed or whomever, and please allow PenFed access to my credit report so they can approve my loan. But there are a lot of tools out there. I think it most importantly, be very, very aware of who you decide to share that very private and personal information with from the get-go, to avoid any potential lapse of breach of sharing of that information.
It sounds like just frequently checking your credit, making sure that you're up to date on what your number is, and you would notice any anomalies, right?
I think it comes down to awareness, making sure you take an active role in keeping your credit safe. And it's your credit, it's your identity. Those are very personal to you. And it's not just people that shop on the internet. Anybody can be a victim to identity fraud or credit fraud. And so it's really up to you to be diligent and take control of that.
And speaking of credit, Jay, can you just talk about some of the credit options that there are out there for people?
Yeah. So fundamentally, of course, there's financing. There's which traditionally it's an installment loan. There's also leases. You have to really decide, really, when you're going into actually doing the financing purpose of the vehicle. You need to look and say, how long am I going to be in this vehicle? That's the first thing that you should probably use to determine what type of financing option you want to go to. Leasing is good for some people. Some people do not like that. We actually at PenFed have a balloon note that takes the place of leasing. It's the same thing as a lease, except it's done with an installment loan. Basically, you have a 3-year term, and at the end of that 3 or 4 year term, you then either have to pay the full amount or refinance the loan. So it's a slightly different from a lease in that perspective. I would consider looking at longer terms if you're going to stay in a car for certainly for above 3 years. Then in that case, look at a 72-month loan. If you're only going to be in that vehicle for 2 years, I wouldn't recommend necessarily going with an 84-month term. And so You also want to look at when you're looking at the financing options that are out there, and you've chosen a financial institution or you're comparing financial institutions. Understand, do they actually set their rates by term? Some financial institutions have the same rate no matter what term you select, and so that's important to understand when you're deciding which actual product or which actual financing option to select.
And Jay, you brought up credit unions. How would someone go about finding if they qualify to be in one of those unions?
Great. Thanks, Scott. Yeah, most of the information is out there on the credit union website as to whether there are specific requirements that you might have to belong to those credit unions. Usually credit unions do offer a more advantageous rate than, shall we say, the standard run-of-the-mill bank. Generally, when you're going out, there's something on the website called membership, and you can click on that, and that will tell you whether there's any requirements. At PenFed, our membership is open to everyone. Great rates for everyone. So we don't have that requirement. So you could start with PenFed.
Any things to keep in mind now that we're in this COVID era, how things have changed, how you might be able to work that to your advantage during, the way that you buy, the way that you finance?
Yeah, I think if you're talking about the shopping process, kind of going back to what Sean alluded to before about knowing who you're buying from, making that decision however you feel safe. Do you want to deal with a private party if you're shopping with a used car, or would you be more comfortable working with a dealer, right? Dealers are probably, a more professional setting. They have their reputation on the line. Again, we talked about earlier the fact that there's plenty of dealers these days that they'll bring the car to you. They want your business. Those are things to consider. So I'd say I definitely these days I'd recommend going to the professional sources, dealers. Not to say that working with a third party is a bad thing. You have to develop that trust and relationship. Just kind of the same thing. Do you want to hang out with certain friends at a restaurant or not? Right? We all have to take care and be cognizant these days of being safe. And the same thing applies to the financing side of it. Pre-arranging your financing saves time when you're shopping. And so if you're pre-approved, you don't have to spend more time in a dealer outside your home setting where you may be exposed or whatnot. So getting pre-approved, working with the lenders that you feel comfortable with, again, those are all things that probably people should consider in their shopping process these days.
Well, I'd like to thank our guests today, Jay, Chris, and Sean. Thank you so much. It's been a real informative conversation.
Our pleasure. Thanks.
Yep. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Scott.
Once again, Jay Fee is the Vice President of Consumer Banking at PenFed Credit Union. Chris Klininsky is the Director of Direct Auto Lending at PenFed Credit Union. And Sean Worthy is the Assistant Vice President for Corporate and Business Development at PenFed Credit Union. I'm your moderator, Scott Maucione, and you're listening to Federal News Network. For more on this discussion, visit federalnewsnetwork.com and search PenFed.